Good evening, City Council members. My name is Latavia Taylor, and before we get started, I just wanted to thank you so much for your time and joining me on today's presentation about family-school partnerships. Within the presentation, we're going to discuss the following topics: key players, defining the problem, the whole child approach, family-school partnerships, programs, implementation process, policy supports, available resources, as well as the whole child formula, just to culminate the entire presentation. So first, let's discuss the key players of tonight's presentation: school leaders, teachers and staff, students, parents, as well as their caregivers. Families are the first educators of their children, and they continue to influence their children's learning and development during the school years and long afterwards. Research demonstrates that effective schools have high levels of parental community involvement. The aim of family-school partnerships framework is to encourage sustainable and effective partnerships between all members of the school community, including teachers, families, as well as students. So defining the problem. Many states, districts, and schools struggle with how to cultivate and sustain positive relationships within families. A monitoring report issued in 2008 by the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Elementary and Secondary Education found that family engagement was the weakest area of compliance by states. Both teachers and principals across the country consistently identify family engagement to be one of the most challenging aspects of their work. If you take a look at the slide, I've highlighted three main problem areas experienced by the key players we discussed earlier. The problem one: parents' lack of comfort. Some parents feel intimidated and unwelcome at the school. Many parents have had negative experiences themselves or are unfamiliar with American culture, so that they don't want to get involved or feel unsure about the value of their contributions. Problem two: tension in relationships between parents and teachers. One example is that parents may feel that teachers wait too long to tell them a problem with their child, and most of the time that they hear from their teachers is usually bad news, and it's very much more of a one-way system versus two-way. And problem three: lack of vested interest. Many families just don't see the value in participating. At the end of the day, students spend more than 1,200 hours each year at school. For kids to develop the lifelong habits necessary to become healthy and successful adults, schools, families, and communities must commit to working together to build a culture that supports the whole child. So now let's get into what the whole child approach is all about. Human relationships are at the heart of teaching and learning. Usually when you ask students what motivated them to keep learning when something hard was happening in their life or to power through a difficult assignment, they'll talk about a person, not the curriculum. This is something we've always known intuitively, but there's also a large body of research on learning and development that points to the power of relationships in a positive school climate in supporting students' learning. A student's learning is influenced by their social emotional state. For example, a student coping with divorce or one who is constantly teased by their classmates may not be able to concentrate or perform well in class. For optimal learning to occur, the emotional and social well-being of the students should also be considered and addressed, and this forms the whole child approach. Digging a little deeper, we'll discuss 6 key findings from the science of learning and development that further strengthens the strategy of the whole child approach. I'm just going to discuss a couple just for the sake of time. Development is malleable. The brain's capacity develops most fully when children and youth feel emotionally and physically safe and connected. Development is variable and unique. As a result, not all students can learn well with one sequence of a rigid pacing guide. And lastly, learning is social and emotional as well as academic. This means that emotions affect learning. In addition, students' abilities to manage their feelings and behavior along with their ability to interact positively with peers and adults all contribute to effective learning and lifelong behaviors. In conclusion, when students are healthy, safe, supported, engaged, and challenged, students are then able to learn at the best of their ability. And the objective of the whole child approach is not just to improve students' academic performance alone, but also contribute to their overall development. Family-school partnerships. How can we build and maintain these partnerships? So let's discuss the strategy that I would like to propose. This strategy builds on existing research suggesting that partnerships between home and school can develop and thrive if both families and staff have the requisite collective capacity to engage in partnership. Many school and district family engagement initiatives focus solely on providing workshops and seminars for families on how to engage more effectively in their child's education. This focus on families alone often results in increased tension between families and school staff. Families are trained to be more active in their children's schools, only to be met with unreceptive and unwelcoming school climate. Therefore, policies and programs directed at improving family engagement must focus on building the capacities of both staff and families to engage in partnerships. This would include incorporating inclusive culture, trusting relationships, capacity building opportunities, as well as a dedication of resources. So what would these programs actually look like? As first step in developing excellent partnerships program, I'm suggesting that schools be encouraged to identify a partners leadership team. A partnerships leadership team, my apologies. This designated team would oversee and coordinate their work with families as well as connect with the parent body in their system. In partnership with the parent body, these teams could utilize the following practices to encourage strong partnerships initiatives in schools. For instance, they would write an action plan for partnerships, an annual action plan for partnerships. They could identify a budget for partnership activities in the schools, provide cross-school trainings for schools, for school principals, teachers, and families to increase their partnership skills, as well as support and consult regularly with parent groups at the system level, just to name a few. Other programs could include things like parent centers, as well as PTA family engagement programs. So, next, just going over the implementation process. Again, the aim of Family School Partnerships Framework is to encourage sustainable and effective partnerships between all members of the school community, including teachers, families, and students. These partnerships should view each partner as making equally valuable contributions while respecting each other's contributions, different contributions, and giving families appropriate opportunities to contribute to school decision-making and governance. School communities could be encouraged to review their current supporting structures, policies, and procedures and develop new ones where necessary. Any successful partnership will involve parents, carers, and families in preparation, planning, and implementation review. So, what policy supports this plan? For schools and districts across the U.S., family engagement is rapidly shifting from low priority recommendation to an integral part of education reform efforts. Servicing roughly 24.6 million children, family engagement has been long protected in policy at the federal level through the Title I of ESSA, as I mentioned, Every Student Succeeds Act, which requires that Title I schools or local education agencies develop parental involvement policies and school family compacts that outline how the two stakeholders will work together to boost student achievement. The policy additionally states that LEAs that receive more than $500,000 in Title I Part A funds should reserve at least 1% of this allocation to assist schools to carry out the parental engagement activities. The distribution of these federal funds, as well as varying grant opportunities, would serve as the main source of funding for family school partnerships programs. In conclusion, I'd like to share one of the 4 resources that strengthen family school partnerships. The first resource is Global Family Research Project. This is an independent entrepreneurial nonprofit organization that supports effective engagement practices and policies so that all children find success in and out of school. Their work supports systemic approaches to family and community engagement, as well as delivers actionable guidance and tools for evidence-based approaches, just to name a few. Additionally, they have constructed a family engagement playbook that captures many of the approaches, tools, and models that organizations are using to understand the concept of co-creation and get better at implementing it with their teams. In conclusion of the presentation, here's a whole child formula which displays the key ingredients, including family engagement, as established within family school partnerships that are needed to assist in the cultivation of a healthy and whole child. Tools and resources, programs and practices, staff, family, student, and community engagement, and all that, we will have a whole and healthy child. The whole child formula reveals that in order for family school partnerships to truly succeed, the key players responsible for our students' engagement must continuously learn and grow together, just as they support learning and growth among students. Thank you so much for your time, council members.